Today, we're going to talk about a tragedy that absolutely shook a nation. But more than that, it's about how that single, terrible moment inspired an incredible, unbelievable act of devotion.
Everything really starts with this one simple phrase from a man named Umesh Jadhav, "I was blessed." Now, that sounds kind of strange, right? Especially when you're talking about a tragedy. So what on earth could he have meant by that?
Well, let's start with this number, 61,000 kilometers. I mean, just try to wrap your head around that. That's like circling the entire globe more than 1.5 times. It's a massive distance, but the reason why he traveled that far, well, that's the real story here.
So Umesh Jadhav, who's a musician from Bengaluru, he set out on this epic pilgrimage. His mission? To visit the home of every single one of the 40 soldiers who died in the Pulwama attack. And at each home, he did something incredibly symbolic. He collected a small amount of soil, sacred soil, from their homes.
But to really understand why he would do this, why he would embark on this unbelievable journey, we have to go back. We have to look at the event that set this whole thing in motion, a day that truly scarred the heart of India. So let's rewind. The year is 2019. The month is February. And we're on a critical highway in one of the most heavily militarized zones in the entire world. Now, we're not talking about just any road. The Jammu-Srinagar highway is notoriously dangerous. The weather is brutal, especially in winter. Heavy snow, landslides. They can shut down the road for days at a time. And when that happens, you get this massive buildup of security convoys just waiting for the all-clear. So on February 14th, 2019, one of these huge convoys, we're talking 78 vehicles, over 2,500 people, it was finally moving after being delayed. But that afternoon, near a place called Lethpora, the unimaginable happened. A car just plows into one of the buses in the convoy, and the explosion was catastrophic.
This was a suicide car bombing, and the scale of it was just immense. The vehicle was packed with over 300 kilograms of explosives. To put that in perspective, that included 80 kilograms of RDX, which is a military-grade explosive. The sheer destructive power was devastating.
And you know, this loss wasn't just felt in one small corner of the country. It was a national tragedy in the truest sense. The 40 personnel who were killed, they came from more than a dozen different states all across India. And that right there is why Umesh Jadhav's journey had to be so long. He had to cross the entire country. So who did this? Well, almost immediately, a Pakistan-based terrorist group, Jaish-e-Mohammed, claimed responsibility. They even put out a video of the attacker.
As you can imagine, the attack sent this wave of grief and anger across the entire nation. And the response, well, it was going to be swift and it was going to come from all sides.
The tone was set right from the top. Prime Minister Narendra Modi said the nation's blood is boiling, and then came this powerful statement that the security forces had been given full freedom to respond however they saw fit. But hey, before any military action, the first response was diplomatic and economic. India revoked Pakistan's special trade status, slapped a massive 200% tariff on all of its imports, and lobbied hard for international groups to put Pakistan on a financial blacklist. The country held its breath. People waited. And then, 12 days after the Pulwama attack, the military response that had been promised, it came. Not on the ground, but from the air. This was the Balakot airstrike. Indian fighter jets flew across the line of control in Kashmir and bombed what was reported to be a major Jaish-e-Mohammed training camp. This was a huge escalation. And according to reports from the Indian Air Force, the mission was incredibly precise. The smart bombs that were dropped by the jets, they apparently hit 5 out of the 6 intended targets inside the camp. So you have the attack, and then you have the retaliation. But after all of that, the question becomes, how do you remember? How do you properly honor the 40 people who gave everything? And this is where our story comes full circle. On the very first anniversary of the attack, a permanent memorial was opened at the CRPF camp in Lethpora, just a stone's throw from where the bombing actually happened. It was a solemn, permanent tribute. The memorial has all the things you'd expect, the names of all 40 men, their pictures, their force's motto. But the last feature on this list, that's what makes it so special. The memorial was sanctified with soil brought from the home of every single martyr. And there it is. That's the connection. The soil used in this national monument was the very same soil that Umesh Jadhav had collected on his incredible 61,000-kilometer journey.
His personal, profound act of remembrance became a physical, central part of the nation's tribute. It's just beautiful.
But, when you strip away the geopolitics, the military strikes, and even the memorials, you're left with this heartbreaking human cost. For the families, the loss is something they live with every single day. So in the end, we've seen two very different kinds of remembrance, haven't we? The official one with its military and diplomatic power, and the deeply personal one, driven by one man's devotion. It really makes you think, when faced with such a tragedy, what is the best way for a country and its people to truly remember?